Welcome to the Court of History, where politics and the law and journalism intersect. I'm here with my colleague, Sean Wilentz, and today we're going to discuss Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and we're going to have a very special guest, Michael Wolff. Sean, I don't know if you have any views on why you think Elon Musk would raise the issue of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump.
Presumably because he knows something about Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. There's been a great controversy about the Epstein files, right? And at first, people inside the administration wanted the Epstein files shown, and then all of a sudden they were very angry because they didn't show anything. The question is, what is in those files, and what is the Department of Justice doing? That's the background of all of this. And then Elon Musk comes up with this, bombshell, as he says, as he puts it. I presume that he knows something about what's in there.
Yeah, well, under pressure from a lot of stir on the internet, principally from the right wing, that there's something in there. Pam Bondi made a point of releasing the so-called Jeffrey Epstein files, and so there was nothing there. And then the deputy director of the FBI, Don Bongino, former right-wing talk show host, said nothing there. But I don't know. It turns out that we are very fortunate to have with us probably the greatest expert who knows more about Jeffrey Epstein and perhaps Donald Trump than any other journalist, Michael Wolff. He has received 2 National Magazine Awards. He's the author of many books, including probably definitive books about Donald Trump. And his latest book, All or Nothing About Trump's Resurrection, which I've read, I think is the single best book on the campaign. And the Times Literary Supplement of London says that Michael Wolff is peerless at invoking the manic energy, chaos, and rivalries of Trump's court. And when he was viciously attacked by Trump's henchmen for this book, the Times Literary Supplement said it was the ultimate accolade. And that the reason that they were criticizing him is that we can be sure he had genuine access to Trump's circle. And so, Michael, welcome to the Court of History.
How are you? Thanks for having me. But just let me add, because I think it gives some perspective on the Trump court and the things that Trump says, is that when Trump went after me, seconds after he posted that, someone in the White House very close to Trump sent me the link and said, "You're welcome."
Well, how do you interpret that?
Yeah, what does that mean?
I think it means, that Trump's attacks are lucrative for anyone he attacks, and also I think that there's a kind of another aspect of being in on the joke, and everybody is sort of in on the joke, and Trump himself is sort of in on the joke. Once in Iowa, during the day before the primary, I think I was in the same hotel that Trump was in, and I was standing around with some people, some journalists that I know, and we had heard that Trump maybe was going to come through the hotel. And in fact, he did, and his people preceded him. And then Trump came out and paused. And obviously everybody thought, well, we're going to get possibly some news here. But instead, he pointed at me and said, "I made that guy rich." And then he walked on.
Well, that's a tribute from Trump. That's what he admires, isn't it?
Exactly. As I say, it's being in on the joke. You're never exactly sure what his point is. Is he attacking you because because he's actually genuinely mad at you, or is he attacking you in some performative social media? Let's gin up traffic for everybody's sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Elon Musk behaves the way Trump does or has the same psychology. And when he said that it's time to drop the really big bomb last week and said that Trump was in the Epstein files, and that's the real reason they haven't been made public, you spoke to the Daily Beast podcast and you talked about some photographs.
Yeah, let me just set the stage here. I started having a conversation with Jeffrey Epstein in 2014. It was. I mean, I had sort of known him, and then he called me and said, "Why don't you write a book about me, about my life and the people I know?" And this was no doubt part of his general effort to rehabilitate himself after having been in jail. And I was like, probably not. But he was incredibly gracious about it and said, well, you decide, but feel free to come and talk to me anytime and come to my house. There's a lot of interesting people here. I'm transparent. And then you can decide. And I started to do this, and it was, among other things, eye-opening and completely fascinating. And he was absolutely right that the people you met at Jeffrey Epstein's house were startling and endlessly interesting.
He cultivated all sorts of people for.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's in kind of weird. I mean, it just sort of played with your head. I mean, I remember once coming in, and you walk up a little set of stairs in this large house, one of the largest houses in Manhattan. And he's standing at the top of the stairs with some guy who I recognize, but I can't quite pin down who this is. Did I go to high school with this person? That weird sense. And then Epstein said, "Oh, Michael, you know Bill, and Bill, you know Michael." And then I thought, "Oh my God, it's Bill Gates." And it was a succession of things like that, almost as if they were posed to get some reaction out of you. At any rate, that's the background. I spoke to him on and off from 2014 through to the Trump campaign, and then the first year of the Trump administration, when I was writing my book, Fire and Fury, in which Epstein became a very, very helpful source, because Epstein and Trump had been the best of friends for almost 15 years. So, that's at the center of this connection of trying to make this connection to Trump and Epstein is that they came from the same place. They helped each other's rise. They were instrumental, I think, in each other's rise. But at any rate, at one point after Trump had been elected, I was sitting talking to Epstein, and he said, "Wait a minute, I got to show you something." And then he went into his safe, and he came out with photographs. They were Polaroids, I think, and he kind of spread them out like playing cards, and it was Trump. I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house, where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of took place. And I remember very vividly 3 of them. There are 2 in which Trump is, the girls, topless girls, are sitting on Trump's lap. And then a 3rd in which he has a stain on the front of his pants, and the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over, laughing, covering
their mouths.
Yeah, exactly, and pointing. 3 or 4 girls, and those are the ones I specifically remember. And My assumption is that they were in the safe, and I have seen him on other occasions take them out of the safe, and I think it's certainly not unlikely that they were in the safe when the FBI came in after his arrest and took everything from the house, including everything that was in the safe. That's what
the FBI raided Epstein's house. When did they do that? Do you recall?
Just after his arrest in July 2019.
It was reported that they took the contents of his safe, and that's where he kept them. And showed them to you.
Yes. No, it's perfectly possible that they were not there then. I don't know, but I know that they have not shown up in any account of what was taken from that safe.
Yeah. So did Epstein say, do you get a sense of what year or what period those photographs were when they might have been taken?
Yeah, either 1999 or 2001, possibly.
Yeah. He showed them to you. Given your knowledge of Epstein, and would you think he would have shown them to anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's likely. I've seen at least one reference to them that does not come from me. I think it was in a British publication, the Daily Mail, maybe the Time. I can't remember, but it was. I think it was in the Spectator.
Yeah, and so Epstein had close relations with foreign leaders, even foreign adversaries. And you've described being in his house and seeing photographs of foreign leaders, framed pictures.
Yes, and I've been there with foreign leaders.
Yeah, who were in the pictures?
Well, in the pictures, there were Castro, the Pope, MBS,
Mohammed bin Salman.
Yes. Clinton, obviously. A range of those.
Yeah, prominent people he had met.
Yes.
These are pictures of the two of them. Is that it? I mean, they're like ego pictures of the two of them?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, sort of what we call the wall of power.
The wall of ego, or the wall of power, right?
Right.
In their offices.
Right.
But did he ever speak to you? You spoke to him often. Did he ever speak to you about talking to Putin?
Yes.
And what did he say?
Well, I remember at one point he said he was going to see Putin, and he described the set of the flight pattern that he was taking, his flight, his plane to such and such a city, and then on from there via I don't remember, possibly Putin's plane.
So he had a personal relationship with Putin.
Let's not go overboard on these things. He was, Jeffrey was prone to there was a reality, and then there was the somewhat augmented reality. I would say he didn't shy away from improving on a story.
Yeah. Would any of them, knowing Epstein, would he have mentioned this to them, shown these pictures to them? And not simply the pictures, but talked about his relationship with Trump in detail?
I don't know. I spend a considerable amount of time with Epstein, for instance, and with Ehud Barak. And Ehud knew everything about Jeffrey. They were very close friends, and certainly I have been involved in discussions between Epstein and Ehud Barak in which the subject was Trump, and Ehud was interested in knowing everything possible that Jeffrey could tell him about Trump.
Yeah. So, how discreet was Jeffrey Epstein, or did he like to gossip?
Yeah, no, he very much liked to gossip, and I think one of the things that drew so many people to his house, so many powerful people, was that Jeffrey was within that circle that he was comfortable with, incredibly indiscreet and incredibly funny and incredibly entertaining.
Yeah.
There's just I wrote, I've been very sort of careful about what I write about Epstein, because a lot of people have not wanted me to write about Epstein. I've proposed an Epstein book on various occasions, and even, I have a fairly good record of selling books, but literally nobody is interested. So, but I did slip a piece about Epstein into a collection that I published a couple of years ago, a collection that's called Too Famous. And, and it's a very vivid look at what happens inside Epstein's house. And in fact, a long part of that was about Steve Bannon's relationship with Epstein.
Yeah. Well, Bannon, of course, knows a lot about Trump and had a relationship with Epstein.
Epstein and Bannon really bonded over their obsession with Trump. They both hated Trump, and they couldn't get enough of talking about him.
Why did Epstein come to hate Trump?
Yeah, what was the change?
Well, the way Epstein told it is that in 2004 they had a fight over a real estate deal in Florida. What are the things rich guys fall out over? Almost exclusively.
This was a Russian real estate. Wasn't it?
Yeah, Epstein had believed he was the high bidder on a house in Palm Beach. He took his friend Trump with him to give him some advice about how to move the swimming pool. Epstein had bid $36 million. Trump immediately went around his back and bid $40 million. So Epstein was livid, and Epstein believed that Trump didn't have the money to do this, so that therefore he must be fronting for someone.
Who did he think he was fronting for?
The guy who ultimately, a year later, bought the house for $100 million, Rybolev. Do I have the name?
That's right. That's the Russian name.
So that was an elaborate.
Is he a Russian oligarch?
Yes. So in Epstein's version, this was a money laundering scheme, which he buys it with. Trump buys it with Rybolev's money. Then Rybolev comes in and actually buys the house for substantially more than that. Therefore, cleaning the money. I don't know. One of those above my pay grade.
But Epstein would have known about this world of money laundering.
Yeah, totally. And then he threatened Trump to go public. At which point, in Epstein's telling, Trump calls the Palm Beach police and tells them about what's going on at Epstein's house with these girls, and that's how that investigation began in Epstein's version.
In other words, Trump was the one who began the downfall of Jeffrey Epstein, as Epstein explained to you. Trump
dropped the dime on Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, and
which would then imply, of course, that he knew and had known for some time about what was going on at Jeffrey's house.
Yeah. So Trump had some protection as the informer, perhaps.
Yes, I think also Trump had various protections with the Palm Beach police and whatever. Yes.
Yeah. So, and what 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 else in terms of his business relations did Epstein learn about Trump or know about Trump?
Well, I think he knew everything, or at least he certainly maintained that he knew an enormous amount about Trump's business dealings, including about his taxes, about how he financed the purchase of Mar-a-Lago, about the he knew sort of, what seemed like vast detail about how Trump's father bailed him out of a bankruptcy situation by buying chips at
Yeah,
the
that's well
Yeah,
known.
yeah. No, that
yeah.
story. Yeah,
Taj.
the Taj Mahal.
So,
Yeah,
so he was very, Epstein knew a lot about Trump's business dealings. He knew a lot about his personal life. Together they were, they were out on the town essentially hunting for women for years and years. At one point, they shared a girlfriend. They were, they were kind of joined at the hip for a long time.
Yeah. What Epstein knew a lot about Russia. Obviously, he knew Putin personally. Did he think that? What did he have any ideas about Trump and Russia? The money. Any money in the background?
Yeah, no, he knew that there was that Trump was laundering money for a lot of Russian oligarchs. This is just by the fact that you're dealing with Russian oligarchs and you're dealing with real estate means that's what you're going to be doing.
And he spoke about that to you.
Yeah. Epstein spoke about that. He actually had doubts about some of the other stuff, all of the the Russian investigation, the golden shower stuff. I remember Epstein saying, no, that was that. Trump is a germaphobe, that he would never have gotten near that.
Yeah, that's not his practice. Enter Elon Musk. Musk also had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
I want to know more about that. I know nothing about that.
Do you have any sense of that?
I don't have a sense of. Well, I can give you the sense that I do have. Epstein was very much involved with the technology community. There was Gates, Peter Thiel, who was often, more than several times at Jeffrey's house in New York. I was once with Epstein and the Google guys. This was, and he was. I think he regarded as one of his advantages as a financial advisor was a pretty intimate knowledge of what was going on in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, there are reports about Musk saying about how he was subpoenaed in a lawsuit by the U.S. Virgin Islands against J.P. Morgan Chase, which he accused the bank of enabling Epstein's sex trafficking activities. And the subpoena from the Virgin Island authorities sought to obtain documents reflecting communications among Musk, J.P. Morgan, and Epstein concerning Epstein involving Musk's accounts. And we never got beyond that. And Musk has denied suggestions that Epstein advised him, calls them idiotic. Doesn't mean it's untrue, but
yeah, no. And as I say, I don't. There are so many names that pass through the Jeffrey's own stories that you kind of forget which ones. I never saw Elon Musk at Jeffrey's house, and I saw many people. But again, I do know that that Epstein was deeply involved in that community, was it's to some degree a climber in that community. If he didn't know someone important, he figured out how to meet them.
Yeah, he was a world-class Himalayan climber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a picture of Ghislaine Maxwell with Musk, and he claimed it was at a Vanity Fair party, but who knows? And of course, you knew her.
Yeah. Although, Ghislaine was pretty much out of the Epstein picture by the time of his first set of legal problems, 2004, 2005. So, it's, I always think that that's somewhat of an irony in this situation. And, one of the reasons that she didn't flee the country is that I think she largely assumed that what happened to Epstein in 2019 reflected a different part of his life than she was involved in.
Yeah. So why do you think Musk brought it up? Is he out of control, or?
Well, I think he probably. Well, I don't know. I think that instinctively, whether by calculation, he brought it up because Trump is deeply vulnerable on this point, and I think it's a sort of like, it's almost like frustration. Nobody else has gotten away with an Epstein connection. How come Trump, who has the closest of connections to this guy, how come he gets away with it? And it's a larger thing. How come he gets away with everything? And it may also be that Epstein, that Elon knows something that we don't know.
Yeah.
Why has Trump been so insistent on the idea that Epstein did not commit suicide? I mean, he's been one of the people who's been, pounding that conspiracy theory a lot, as far as I know.
Who, Trump?
Trump, yeah. Why?
I don't know. I mean, woe be it for me to say why Trump.
Yeah, sure, I understand. I get it. But speculate.
Conspiracy theory. I think that there's a thing about Trump that he actually often. We think of him as dissembling about everything, but actually he often responds in this visceral fashion. Mm-hmm. And the idea of, I don't know what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. I do not know how he died. I do know, however, that the idea of the way they describe him dying, that he would have had to have broken his own neck, is preposterous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you say that, Michael?
I think it's pretty hard to break your own neck. Otherwise, we would all do it.
Especially these days. Yeah.
But and on the other side, I would say the idea that there was foul play here would probably require. At least a half a dozen assistant U.S. attorneys and that many FBI agents to keep utterly quiet about what they know. So both scenarios seem kind of impossible to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What do you make of this intense Musk Trump relationship? Was it purely transactional, or what's the psychology of it? And then the intensity of the explosive nature of the split up. You understand Trump.
Yeah. I think that I think that there's hubris on the part of both men here. And I think Elon, like a lot of those Silicon Valley guys, thinks I know how to save the world. I know how to fix it. And I think that he went in and he had discussions with Trump and basically said, I can I can revolutionize the management of government by bringing basic technology, basic advanced technology to bear here. And I can imagine how this discussion went, because Trump is going, yeah, sure, yeah, we need you to do that. And I think that Elon might have convinced himself that he was really saying, yeah, we need you to do that, while really saying, I'm not listening to you because this is too many details for me. And also what I want is your money. So I will say anything at this point to get your money.
Right.
And I think that as the days, as he returned to the White House, and as the days went on, he was, Trump is always happy for someone else to do the job. Trump is fundamentally, among other things, lazy. And I remember, and I think that this is I now can't remember whether it was Jeffrey Epstein who said this or Steve Bannon, but to the point, one of them said, Trump lets you be in charge until other people realize that he's not in charge, then you're no longer in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was part of what happened here. And I think that there was, growing resistance on the part of the White House staff, which Trump failed to countermand. Resistance to Elon, and this began to fray tempers. And then I think Trump pushed him out. I think Trump is like, okay, let's get rid of him. You just don't. The point I always make with everyone is that it always ends in tears with Trump. Always, 100% of the time. There's no one in the first administration who survived until the end. It ends in humiliation, public firings, indictments, tears, and the fact that Elon lasted that long. I always put it, Steve Bannon, who really had this sort of Elon role in the first White House, I'm the real brain here and I'm the disruptor in chief. That lasted until August. So Elon is out a couple of months before that.
Yeah, it's a dangerous role to have.
Yeah.
There's one person who survived, but only at a distance. And that's someone you've written about and their relationship. And that's Melania.
Yes. She survived by not being there.
Yeah. She figured it out. She's
right. She had it right.
Yeah. Actually, there is one person, Jared, survived and survived. He had the advantage of being family, but he was also very adept at managing his father-in-law.
And he's distant now, isn't he?
Yeah, no. And the fact, everybody in the White House now, if I were them, I would say, hey, well, what does Jared know that I don't know?
Yeah, one, marry the daughter, and two, not be there now and make your own money first.
Right.
Yeah. So what kind of marriage does Trump have?
I don't think he has. I think he has a entirely sui generis marriage, or maybe he has a marriage that really rich people can have, that only really rich people can have, rich people who have lots of real estate, so you don't have to be in proximity to one another.
Mm.
But I think it is. I think it's highly transactional. I think it may well work for both of them, but it doesn't. Right. It does not work on any level in the manner of an American middle class marriage.
Yeah, I don't. She's very rarely in Washington.
Almost never. Even the people around Trump always say, when she's there, she's treated as a guest.
Yeah. He still has a susceptibility to wacky people who come in, and he gets
Laura Loomer.
Yeah, that's one name.
Yeah, his susceptibility, the wackiness is a byproduct, or
Not that he's not wacky, but
yeah,
go on.
but he's susceptible to people who say what he wants to hear, and and at some level, you have to be wacky to do that.
Mm-hmm. How long do people who are utterly subservient survive around him? I mean, look at Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio was first came to mind. Yep.
Yeah, well, he won't survive, because he'll you just can't do it. I mean, the self abasement that is required there is it will be too much for someone who is actually has accomplished things in life. There are people who have not accomplished things. One of the people who has is still by his side, is constantly by this side, is this guy, Dan Scavino,
Yeah.
Who began as a caddy at the, at a Trump golf course and rose up to be a golf course functionary, and then followed him into the White House to be the guy who does the social media. I mean, the total, and actually quite a nice guy, very nice guy, but a professional lackey.
Yeah. And that's the only kind of survival that exists around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan is even is a rare case, because those people who do survive around him in their lackeydom are usually women.
Why is that, Michael?
Well,
what kind of woman? What is it that makes him tolerant of that?
They're very good-looking women. They're women to his taste, and they function. They have a. I mean, there was a lot of in 2016 or in 2017 when the first Trump administration began. There was a lot of in the White House a kind of whispering about who, what, where,
right,
what
right.
was he, and then that kind of passed into thinking he doesn't. He's post-sexual, but nevertheless still surrounded by these very good-looking women, all of whom, to form, all of them have long, straight hair, always worn loose, above the knee skirts, high boots in winter. So it's they all look alike, and they all look like Melania or Ivanka or in fact, during during his trial in New York, when he was convicted in the Stormy Daniels case, after that, I spoke to one of the jurors, and this person said, well, what really, one of the things that got to us was that all the Trump women, and those were the women who were testifying and the women sitting beside him in court, they all looked the same. That really gave us the creeps. And, since this trial was about a sexual thing, I mean, it really, how could you ignore this?
Yeah. It's, they're like the guilt in the White House or at Mar-a-Lago.
No, exactly.
Right. The polish, right. The guilt.
And the one, a woman now who's central to this White House is a woman by the name of Natalie Harp, who came into the campaign in 2022, I think, as the step and fetch, the body person, to fetch the coffee. And then her function, or one of her functions, then became to carry the portable printer when he was on the golf course.
Right.
Just as a point in every day of the campaign, one of the hardest jobs I think you can design in any reality, a presidential campaign. But his campaign every day started with 18 holes of golf. But anyway, she followed him. She had her own golf cart, and she would follow him with the printer. And at each hole, then she would print out things. And
he has to read things on paper.
exactly. And then she found that gave her incredible power. I mean, she was essentially the information gatekeeper. And he came to, I mean, she just fed him again what he wanted to hear, and really became central to him. And really, to this day, I mean, there are few waking hours when she is not by his side. I mean, I've gone through the plane manifests during the campaign, and she is the only one who was always on the plane with him. And now she sits right outside of the Oval Office, and she is she's probably the most reliable conduit to get access to Trump.
That's amazing. But what do you think the role is of J.D. Vance? In your book, All or Nothing, Trump is almost immediately disillusioned with Vance. And your description of the vice presidential selection process, he's not really who he wants.
Right,
but because he wants nobody. As a matter of fact, at one point he says to aides, "Why do I need a vice president? I can do this without a vice president. Why?" In 2016, when he picked Pence, literally going out to make the announcement, he's saying, and Pence is already there, and Pence's family is there. He's asking aides, "Can I pick somebody else?" So it's that thing. I don't want to share the stage with anybody.
How does you see Vance from your point of view? I mean, he seems in your book. Vance has he's this baby face guy, and he's part of Tucker Carlson's group, and he's sort of foisted on Trump.
Yeah, well, and I think Vance has been doing his seemingly absolute best to play into this role. I have to be the loyal yes man flatterer. And we've seen a couple of off stage asides that show that he's probably not so happy in this role. And right now. I think it has, in the last couple of days, has gotten much more complicated for Vance, because Vance's support, and I'm not sure he really has any other base of support, is with the tech guys.
Yeah,
exactly, and even Musk in July, Musk said to Trump, the price of my support is you taking Vance on the ticket.
Where did you hear that, Michael?
From someone who was in the room. That's I say this in my book, and likewise, Trump's decision to support Vance for in the Ohio Senate race was because of Peter Thiel insisting and making his support contingent on that. Vance is very much a creature of these guys, and he's really not, in the Republican mold. Vance, whether you agree with him or not, is a intellectual, self-styled or not. Certainly not in the Republican mold. So what happens now? And Trump is clearly going to be looking for trying to test Vance's loyalty. Are you Team POTUS? Are you Team Elon? And this is going to require some. This is going to be a real test of Vance's political adroitness.
Yeah, I have heard, and it's been reported that Vance and others, and I've heard Thiel and others, have urged Musk to make up with Trump and get back in. Of course, that enhances their power too, and they've gotten a lot out of this relationship. But Trump has rejected that, and that makes Vance position that much
10
more
years.
difficult. 10 years.
Right, but I would say that the idea of that Vance will be the will pick up the MAGA mantle is also pretty unlikely. That Trump will, as the Mike Pence fate is I think a pretty predictable pattern for what's going to happen to Trump vice presidents.
Yeah, well, hang Mike Pence was the end of it.
Yes.
So Bannon is kind of like, he's living in internal exile here, but he must know a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I always found Steve especially keen and insightful about Trump.
He's a little distant. He doesn't get hurt now. He's not on the inside, as it were, and yet he must have access and he must have an understanding of what's going on.
I would say he has no real access to Trump. He has access to people around Trump.
Yeah,
around him. Right.
And he is certainly capable of making his feelings and positions known. I mean, he calls up people and threatens them, and it's just it's the life is too short kind of thing. Give Steve what he wants because we can't take the calls anymore. And I do think that Steve remains quite influential with the sort of hardcore of the MAGA core.
Mm-hmm. He called for Elon Musk to be deported. He called for his security clearance to be canceled, for his contracts to be canceled. Some of that suggests that Trump was aware. I mean, Trump has called Musk a drug addict. When did he discover this? Yesterday?
I mean, obviously, this was, the Times ran a story a week ago about rather an extensive story about Musk's drug use. And that was certainly supported by leaks out of the White House.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons that this ramped up so quickly, is that Musk was so furious about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they were aware for quite a while.
They do.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to tell what Trump is aware of. I mean, Trump is aware only of what he wants to be aware of, I try to explain. It's really important to understand that information doesn't get to Trump because he's information phobic. I mean, he literally keeps it out. And his way of doing that is to just keep talking. So you can't tell him anything.
Do you think he'll ever get to the position, and it may be where he's overwhelmed by circumstances and that method doesn't work?
Well, I don't think he would know how to apply any other method. He can't listen.
Mm-hmm. So what happens when the economy, for example, as a result of his tariffs, just grinds into stagflation, or he doesn't really care, I don't think, or does he?
No, and I mean he doesn't. I mean the operation is very he creates conflict because conflict gives him attention. When the conflict begins to go against him, he creates another conflict. So over the weekend, when I was speaking to various people in the White House, it was thank God for LA, because that pushed Elon out of the news.
That's what people in the White House were saying.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this was it's just a succession of the next headline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you make of Stephen Miller's relationship with Trump, and then Stephen Miller's wife's relationship with Elon Musk? She's a key aide now. That all worked well for them as a couple then, but here we are.
Yeah, Stephen is, and from the first White House is always sort of treated as an odd fellow. Oh, that's Stephen, is a kind of refrain, a sort of acknowledgement that there's something a little off about Stephen. I remember at one point in the campaign, one of Trump's close aides, they had the New York Times had called up, so we want to do some policy discussions, and it's very hard to do policy discussions with Trump or his aides because there is no policy, and it was like, we want someone to talk about immigration, and so they sent Miller out, and that generated one of those terrible headlines. We're gonna screw every immigrant and all that.
Habeas corpus, I think that was his thing. Yeah.
And then one of the aides said, "Oh, that was our fault to let Stephen out with all of his masturbatory fantasies about immigration." And so there's there's an acknowledgement, almost a clear-eyed acknowledgement of what Stephen Miller is, and that is sometimes useful, and then sometimes ignored. But I think it's important to understand that that it's not just people outside, Democrats who are seeing Stephen Miller as a crazy person. Even inside, they see him like that.
Why do they think he's crazy?
Well, because I mean, he's you take, he looks at you for 1 minute and you think, uh-oh. I mean, there's really, I mean, I don't know what it is. It's spectrumy,
yes,
whatever. There's no mistaking it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not so much about his ideas necessarily, or about the fact that he is, as you say, masturbating over immigration. I mean, is that the problem, or is it just
no? I mean, the problem is in understanding that he's always going to go too far, but that's useful.
Yeah, that was
and his inability to understand context, his inability to relate to people. I mean, just classic kind of things. But again, that is at times useful. Yeah. At other times, Trump will say, "Keep him away from me."
Does he? He says that about Stephen Miller?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you couldn't. I mean, I cannot stress how much this person is unusual.
So
discomforting.
So Trump thinks that Stephen Miller is a creep, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and so what would he make of this marriage where one person is a?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult. The rumors are obviously flying about all aspects of this, and within the White House too. I'd say that this is a favorite topic of conversation at this moment, with some Schadenfreude attached to it.
Mm. And does Trump weigh in here, or does he just leave it alone?
No, usually about these things, he gets, he's amused by these things. All kind of relationship things, especially marriages, amuses Trump.
Yeah, and the bigger the mess, the more amusing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I'm thinking it's now 2027, and we're looking forward to the Republican hopefuls all ginning up campaigns to run for president. And Donald Trump doesn't want to leave, does he?
Yeah, no, well, I'll tell you what will happen is that he will, it's not that he doesn't want to leave. He just wants to continue to be Donald Trump. In order to do that, there can't be another Republican president. So whoever is the nominee, Trump will undermine. The Democrats will win. Trump will go back to Mar-a-Lago still as the head of the Republican Party and the MAGA movement. And we will just do that whole Mar-a-Lago phase all over again. That's what Trump does. Every phase is repeated because if it works, let's do it again.
He hates Republicans, doesn't he?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean,
he's not a Republican, is he?
No. I mean, he's uninterested. He hates everybody. And he's uninterested in everybody. It's just about Donald Trump.
And what does he think of his followers?
I mean, in one of my books, I can no longer remember which one because there have been now quite a few.
Well, they're all going to be in one volume in the Library of America, Mike.
Yes, he refers to his followers as the great unwashed. At one point in the campaign, where did this? At any rate, he finds himself talking to, somebody, a big supporter, Trump in this, but the guy has a tattoo in the middle of his head. And Trump is obviously, he can't take his eyes off this and this. And the guy is complimenting him, and Trump is accepting these compliments. And then finally, Trump interrupts him and says, "How much would it cost to get that tattoo removed?"
Right.
Well, Trump he can lend him the money.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And interest.
Yeah. Well, Trump pays a lot of attention to people's appearance, don't you think?
Oh yeah. It's one. I mean, you just have to think. Always go back. Trump what is his main qualification? He spent 14 years as the star of a top-rated reality television show. So it's all about television, about how it looks, about who's playing what character.
So did you see the picture that he put out, his new official portrait, but also his White House communications team keeps putting out these AI-generated pictures of him. And there's one of him, he's got a big overcoat, he's got his red tie, he's striding down the street, he's got this tough guy look, and it's darkness, and it's the city streets at night. And to me, it was a dead ringer for John Gotti. It was the Gotti look.
And he's quite devoted to his version of gangsterism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What does he think that means? Besides the fact that he's, dealt with gangsters and is,
I think he thinks, it's a tough guy. It's a tough guy look. He wants to be a tough guy. That's what he's doing. And, and John Gotti, incredibly performative, a New York guy, very much. Although, when he was indicted, in Atlanta on RICO charges, his first response was how can I be indicted on RICO charges? That's for mobsters. He said, I went to Wharton.
Yes, that's the shield. I went to Wharton.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, look, Michael, we could talk forever, and I hope we will return. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk to Sean and me on the Court of History. And I will repeat again that I think your book, All or Nothing, is the most insightful book on the last campaign.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, anytime. You just put your quarter in and you can't stop me. So
thank you very much, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you very much.
Court of History, the ultimate court. See you next time.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.